Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jayztwocents founder and CEO, Jayztwocents.
GeForce gamers, welcome. Welcome. Are you ready? Are you ready? It is time. Today, we are going to overclock the world's best graphics card under $300. Under $300. Ladies and gentlemen, before today, this was only a dream. A dream of GeForce gamers getting unsurpassed 1080p performance for under $300. NVIDIA set out on this dream a long time ago with the development of the Turing architecture. And I'm proud to present to you today the 1660 Ti overclocking guide. I like boats. So that's why I let World of Warships sponsor today's video. World of Warships is a free-to-play game that they call the thinking man's action game because it has the perfect balance of action and strategy. One of my favorite aspects of World of Warships, and I've been playing this game for more hours than I'd like to admit, is the extremely high detailed weather effects and ship details. With more than 200 ships across 11 nations, there are a lot of different playstyles to choose from. In fact, I've been using World of Warships as my detail reference for my model shipbuilding. If you followed my Instagram, you know I've got a thing for model building, and I've just recently built a 350 scale Bismarck, and I'm currently working on a 200 scale USS Missouri, and I've been using World of Warships as my detail reference because rather than scour the internet for old black and white photos, I can use their 3D scans to recreate the details on my ships from any angle I want to see it. But they're constantly changing the game to make things more exciting and bringing new game modes and challenges, keeping things kind of new and exciting. In fact, they've just revamped the way aircraft carriers work, where instead of sending out squadrons of planes to perform auto attacks, you now pilot the planes and control every aspect of that attack, bringing aircraft carriers a whole new dynamic. In fact, if you use my exclusive code down below, you get a free premium aircraft carrier, the USS Langley. Sign up using Play Langley 2019, you will receive 300 doubloons, 1 million credits, the USS Langley premium aircraft carrier, 3 days of premium time, and more. So what are you guys waiting for? Join me and 30 million other players out there in the high seas. You don't know which one's me, because I'm the one putting holes in your ship. All right, so obviously we're just having a little bit of fun at the start of this intro. You know, I got 2 emails from NVIDIA saying how they weren't too happy with me this week. I figured, why not just start at the top? Work our way down the list. Whatever, it's hot. I don't wanna wear this leather jacket right now. How does he do it? All right, so I mentioned in our review of the 1660 Ti that we're gonna be doing overclocking separately because, yeah, I mean, it's not really that different, but I wanted to wait for the official drivers to come out because I had some funkiness happening the other day when we were doing our testing. So we're also using a retail / MSRP model. So this is the EVGA GTX 1660 Ti SC or XC Black Edition. So it's the single fan with triple slot, but I wanted to see what the best performance you could get out of the cheapest price point available to a 1660 Ti. They also decided to email me and correct me on like why it's called 1660 Ti. And I guess it's quite simple. The performance is closer to a 2060. But they didn't want to call it a 2050 because they didn't want to confuse people thinking that it had RTX because the 20 series has RTX. But it's far enough ahead of the 1060, they didn't want to call it a 10 series card. Although, fun fact, if you want to download this driver, it's under 10 series. But it's slightly better than halfway. So it's closer to a 2060 than a 10 series, so 16 is just over halfway between 10 and 20. It's just that simple.
That's the official reason.
That's the official reason. But the reason why I use the EVGA card at the $279 price point versus the Phoenix card from ASUS is because of superior build quality. Now ASUS, the Strix card probably overclocks very, very well, but I stand by my opinion that it doesn't make sense to buy a $329 1660 Ti when you can save an extra, what, 50 bucks, 40 bucks, and get yourself a 2060, which is 30% faster than this one, for not 30% more money, if that makes sense. So it's like 15% more money for 30% more performance. That's a price ratio I can get behind. So there's 2 pieces of software that you could use to overclock this card. Obviously MSI Afterburner. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of been like the staple overclocking utility for the longest time. It's free. As you can see, we are running the 419.17 driver, but I'm gonna be using MSI Afterburner for our overclocking here. You can also use EVGA Precision X1. If you have more than one piece of overclocking software installed though, Make sure they're not running together at the same time, especially if they have the different profiles. They're gonna be struggling for control of the graphics card. Now the voltage slider, there's still debate on if this actually does anything. And this is a percentage. We talked about this a million times in every video we do about overclocking, where all this does is move the percentage of where the max voltage will apply in terms of the frequency curve, not actually apply more voltage. So we always recommend starting with this at 0 and then playing with this a little bit to see if it fixes stability once you find your max core clock. So right here, you've got your power limit set to 100, you've got your temperature limit set to 83, core clock, and then memory clock. So the first things we're gonna do, max out the power limit. In this card, it's at 100. And I reached out to EVGA to ask them why that is. EVGA explained that the reference max power draw on this chip is 120 watts. And what they've done is they've gone ahead and just made 130 watts. So you're technically getting 10 extra watts at the 100 and then just not letting the slider go any farther. Custom models like the Strix and then other like the dual and the dual fan stuff from EVGA, those will have additional headroom with the power slider. But on this card, they just maxed 100 and made that the max TDP rather than giving you a slider. It just lets it go to it automatically so you don't hit that as soon. Don't necessarily think that you're not actually getting a benefit here. Your card's total TDP could have increased at that 100 number. Temperature limit, we're gonna max this thing too. Looks like max is 89. We're gonna hit apply on that. And so what this is telling us now is don't start throttling this card unless either we go over 100% power draw or we reach 89 degrees Celsius, which I don't think this card will ever hit. Now I'm gonna use Heaven for this. A lot of people always say, why do you use Heaven? Why do you use Heaven? Yes, it's a DX11 test. Yes, it's really old, but it's DX11 nonetheless, which most games are still running. And it's still a good loop to run to test temperatures and at least one level of stability. You're never gonna find your max stable unless you run it in all your games or your favorite game or whatever and can get through a whole playing session without any sort of crashes. You could find your stable in 9 out of 10 games. But it's that one game and that one engine that's stupid picky when it comes to core clock that could suddenly start crashing on you. So anyway, what I tend to do here with Heaven is I will set it to windowed mode. We're running 1080p because they talked about this being the ultimate 1080p card. Anti-aliasing, I'm gonna put that up to 8x because I wanna stress the card as much as possible. Anti-aliasing too is also gonna stress our frame buffer. So we wanna make sure that we're memory stable. Tessellation is on normal, that's fine. And then everything else, we just have it Ultra, DirectX 11, obviously. And then preset custom because we changed these settings. And like I said, at 1080. So we're gonna go ahead and start up the benchmark. We're gonna bring our overclocking window back to the foreground. And we are going to just kind of see where our temperatures maximize with the stock fan curve and no sliders changed, with the exception of our power limit and temperature target. But these two things really aren't gonna have any effect on our max overclocks and stuff because obviously the temperature curve is what matters most. Now what you're gonna find here as you're doing this test is you're gonna find that these core clocks, where's my cursor? You can go back to this face isn't, yeah. What you're gonna find right here is your frequency is going to slowly drop over time as this increases. Don't confuse that with thermal throttling. Thermal throttling is when the core starts to go below its rated speed, whether it be the base clock or turbo clock, to save itself from overheating. That is different from a dynamically controlled frequency based on a temperature curve. Anything over 1,770 megahertz on a 1660 Ti is considered a GPU Boost 3.0 overclock. So if you are running 1771 megahertz, you're technically overclocking past the reference turbo clock scale on this card. So now that we've found that we are maxed out at 5960C with the fan at 100, I always recommend maxing out the fan for air overclocking because obvious reasons. If you care about volume, then you shouldn't care about overclocking because you need the headroom. So we're gonna go ahead now and just start with our core clock. You can do memory and core clock together. The problem is if you do, you don't know exactly what caused your crash. So if you're adjusting both of those at the same time and you crash, well, was it memory or was it core? So do one or the other. Very similar to CPU. So we're gonna go ahead and just do a plus 50 on that. I've never found a card that couldn't do a plus 50 on an NVIDIA side. So as you can see, by doing plus 50, we went right to 1965, 1950. You're gonna find too on NVIDIA cards, especially the Turing cards, and I think Pascal too. This is gonna always change by 15 megahertz. That's the stepping. The stepping is always in 15 megahertz. In case anyone watching goes, well, my AMD yada yada, I can do it. Well, because it's different core logic altogether. So let's go ahead and try 65. That put us to 1980, as you can see, because we increased it 15. And what you can find is sometimes you'll be right on the edge where plus 70 would bring you up 15. So even though we only went plus 5, you can find that sometimes that will go up higher than 5. So let's try 75, right? I just upped it another 5. Still didn't change, because that means we're still within that 15. So let's go ahead and go 80, no change, 90. There it is. So that brought us up. But see, it went higher than 15 at that point because we increased it 15 from our original 75 right there, but we got 30. The reason for that is because GPU Boost 3.0. There's various factors. The temperature curve, the actual voltage curve, the actual power target, the power limit, and because that scene may not have been requiring as much power, it's able to go 2 steps rather than 1. So that's why the number you enter in on the core is not going to directly relate to the actual frequency change. So that's why you have to play with it in increments, because if you try and go plus 50 on everything, you'll crash extremely early and you may not find where your stock or your stable clock is. So let's just go ahead now and find where we sort of crash on our core, shall we? So let's go ahead and try 120. So that put us up to 2025, 2040. I suspect we're probably gonna start crashing here pretty soon. Yeah, see, I can't get 2040 to go up from this point. So I'm afraid if I do 150 right now, it'll probably spike up and crash on us. 2055. So what worries me here is I've added 30 to this. I've added 30 to this, and we're still sitting here. So what that tells you is I'm gonna put this back down to 120. If I turned on the system cold and fired up a game with the card sitting in the 30s, it would go much higher than what you're actually seeing right now. And then we'd probably end up getting a crash. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna start playing with the memory, and I bet you we can get 1,000 out of this, no problem whatsoever. Yep. But look at our core speed, that dropped down slightly. So we're at 7,000 plus 2010 is where we're kind of sitting. Our temperatures haven't changed. So yeah, what I want to do now, because I know this graphics card was bouncing in the low 18,000 megahertz, makes it the world's best GPU under $300. So what I want to do right now is go ahead and run through all the benchmarks we did in our review with this overclock applied to see how much we gained. I want to see how far close it gets to like the 2060, and then obviously compared to the 1070 again, because I'm sure you guys saw in some of the tests this lost to or beat a 1070. And if you compare the launch pricing of a 1070 being $500 and this card being $279, yeah, we've come a long way in the last couple of years in terms of graphics technology. And although the pricing scale seems to be obviously sliding up, at least you're getting something for your money. So let's see how it compared. So if there's anything you've learned from today's video, it's the fact that this video contains the most amount of wardrobe changes in any Jayztwocents video ever. But more importantly, when you overclock graphics cards, they get faster. Thanks for watching today's video, guys. No, seriously, when you overclock the card, if you have enough cooling headroom like we've shown right here, you can significantly improve the performance for free. That's why we always recommend getting lower model cards that have decent coolers on them and overclocking them yourself. I mean, with the ASUS SKUs charging $5 per increment and having 3 different strict SKUs within $15 of each other just kind of makes no sense when you can move those sliders on your own. But I digress. As long as you have good enough coolers, you can do it. So I always recommend overclocking your graphics cards if you are comfortable with doing it. You can't really hurt it with MSI Afterburner. You'll software crash long before you'll ever come anywhere near the limits of your hardware. Plus there are safeguards in place with the power limits and all that stuff, so you're not gonna hurt anything. Worst case scenario, if it crashes, you just clear the profile and start over once again if the crash is bad enough. But as you can see though, by looking at the charts, we push up against to like the GTX 1070, which was a significantly more expensive card at launch, well over about 500 bucks, and pushes up pretty close to the 2060 at stock speeds. Yes, you can overclock a 2060, I know, but if you can get near 2060 performance without the stuff you don't necessarily want to pay for, like the RT cores and the Tensor cores, then the 1660 Ti and overclocked is definitely a compelling choice. So we'll just have to wait and see now what happens with the rumored 1660 non-Ti and the 1650, which would make this an even more cluttered product stack than it already is. But hey, options are good, right? All right, guys, I'm gonna go. Thanks for watching, and as always, we'll see you in the next one.